The sky outside Darren's window was the color of wet concrete, and it matched the mood. I sat across from him while he half read my management proposal like it was a damn invoice for toner. 15 pages, 6 years of skipped weekends, working flu season after flu season, fixing client messes that his favorites screwed up, all in that folder, and he flipped through it like a diner menu. After maybe 40 seconds, he shut it, didn't even clear his throat. "Appreciate the effort," he said, not looking at me. "But you're not senior management material. Maybe in a year or two, if you sharpen your edge, sharpen my edge." What the hell did that even mean? I didn't say anything about saving the Sandhurst contract or the 3 audits I cleaned up behind the scenes. Didn't mention I'd trained half the operations floor without ever getting credit. Just nodded like a polite idiot and stood up, telling myself I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Quick note: before we get deeper, share which city or country you're watching from. I walked past the glass office that should have had my name on it, the one I'd spent late nights prepping reports for, staying quiet while people like Trevor took bows for work they barely understood. I didn't even stop to look at it, just hit the elevator and punched the button like it owed me money. Back in my truck, I sat behind the wheel, staring at my own face in the rearview mirror. I didn't see a man who'd lost. I saw someone finally done pretending. My jaw was tight, my hands steady. Something in me clicked. I decided 2 things right then. First, the family beach trip, canceled. I wasn't going to sit around playing the happy dad after being gut-punched like that. My wife would understand. Mason wouldn't like it, but I needed time to think, time to plan. Second, I was done spoon-feeding that lazy ops team. Well, that was about to change. Let them try flying blind for once. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, just sat there in my truck with the AC blowing and the radio off. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a decision. And it was already in motion. The next morning, I didn't walk in with a coffee in one hand and a folder of prepped notes in the other. I didn't log on early to triple-check the day's agenda, or chase down vendor updates like I usually did before most of the office even showed up. I walked in at exactly 9 o'clock, not a minute earlier. Amanda from finance blinked when she saw me by the elevator. "You okay?" she asked. "Never better," I said, walking past her. No summaries in the inbox, no reports waiting on anyone's desk. Just me, doing my job. No more, no less. By 10 o'clock, the usual chaos started rolling in. A delivery truck had the wrong invoice codes. One of the new hires scheduled a meeting over a supplier's blackout window. Darren's calendar got double booked with a Ferris review and a Sandhurst audit. I watched it all unfold from my desk, like someone who'd finally stepped off the treadmill. Every issue, I rerouted where it belonged. Vendor error, sent to procurement, scheduling mix-up, CC Ed HR, and let them sort it out. Someone knocked on my cubicle wall around 10:30, Andy from Ops, holding his laptop like it was about to bite him. "Hey, are you not handling the Hartman account issue?" "Nope," I said, not looking up. "Not my lane anymore." He stood there a second like he didn't hear me right, then walked off. By lunch, 2 people had stopped by. One had emailed twice, and someone else actually tried calling my cell. I didn't answer. I walked to the diner 2 blocks down and ordered a hot meal like a real human being. Sat in the booth, phone flipped face down, no spreadsheet open next to my plate for the first time in... hell, I couldn't even remember. The food wasn't great. Didn't matter. It was hot. And it was mine. Back at the office, people were starting to notice. I could feel it. That buzz, that tension, like the current had shifted and no one could figure out where the surge was coming from. I kept my head down, kept working, kept letting people stumble around without the cheat codes I used to hand out for free. By 5 o'clock, I was already halfway home. Mason was on the couch, video game controller in hand, when I walked in the door. He looked up, surprised. "You're home early. Figured out my time's worth more than how I've been spending it," I said, kicking off my boots. He paused the game. "Like, from now on?" "From now on." We ordered takeout, ate on the couch, watched some show we liked that made no sense to me. I didn't pretend to follow the plot. I just sat there and let it run. I climbed into bed, turned off the lamp, and closed my eyes like a man who just discovered what boundaries felt like. And I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. The next day, the office felt like it was holding its breath. Something was off. You could feel it in the way people hovered near their phones, the tight whispering behind doors, the rapid footsteps that never actually led anywhere. Ferris and Knox had blown a gasket. By mid-morning, the yelling started, first behind Darren's door, then leaking out as people got looped in. Their VP had flagged a mess in our last deliverable. Formatting errors, missing breakdowns, a duplicate billing entry that could have cost them 6 figures if it slipped through. And the worst part? No one knew how to fix it. I sipped my coffee like it was just another Tuesday. At 10:37, Darren came charging toward my desk, face red, shirt collar wilted, forehead shining with sweat. He didn't even pretend to play it cool. "Where's the master doc for Ferris?" he asked, voice tight. I looked up, slow and calm. "Shared drive. Folder labeled F&K_matrix. Subfolder, system master. Everything's tabbed by module and labeled by priority." He stared at me like I'd just spoken a different language. "I walked through that system in July," I added. "Twice, in team meetings. You asked me to shorten the walkthroughs?" He turned and practically ran back to his office. I went back to my screen. Compliance prep for the state auditors was due by Friday, and unlike the Ferris mess, it actually fell under my responsibilities. I had a checklist open, audit trails pulling up, and 3 email threads flagged for review. Half an hour later, he was back. "I'm working on compliance," I said without looking up. "State audit. We miss that deadline, we get fined." He stood there for a second, waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. Eventually he left. No smart remark, no fake thanks. Just turned around and walked back down the hallway like a man who finally understood he was screwed. That night, I picked up dinner on the way home. Chicken tenders and fries, nothing fancy. Mason and I watched the game in the living room, feet up, junk food on paper plates. "Think they'll make the playoffs?" he asked, pointing at the screen. "If their defense stops playing like they're allergic to tackles," I said, popping open a soda. We laughed, talked stats. He actually leaned into me when one of the touchdowns hit. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd had a night like that. My work phone buzzed for the first time during the third quarter, then again, then again. By the end of the game, it had gone off 63 times. I didn't touch it once. I just threw away our empty plates, brushed my teeth, and went to bed like a man who finally knew what his peace was worth. The next morning, I walked into a war zone, phones ringing nonstop, people huddled in corners like hostages. 2 interns arguing over who was supposed to send the Ferris summary. The copier was jammed. Again. And Darren? Darren was pacing outside his office, phone glued to his ear, talking fast and sweating through his shirt like it was July in Phoenix. I could see the dark rings under his arms from 10 feet away. He caught my eye as I passed and looked like he might say something, but didn't. I kept walking. 10 minutes later, I got the email. "Meeting, urgent, conference room, B, now." I closed the compliance tracker I'd been working on and made my way down the hall, still calm, still quiet. Darren was already inside, wiping his glasses with his tie like it'd help, and sitting at the end of the table was Rick Telford, the regional director. First time I'd seen him in person in over a year. Rick didn't waste time. "What's it going to take to keep you here?" he asked. No greeting, no handshake. I sat down, let the silence hang for a second. Darren was trying to keep a straight face, but the panic was all over him. "Depends," I said finally, "because I've got an offer from another firm." Rick leaned back, arms folded. "Okay, better title, better pay, full decision-making authority. They want me to build out their systems from scratch." Darren let out a weak cough, but didn't say a word. Rick nodded slowly. "We can match the pay. Title 2. And if this is about decision-making, I'm willing to restructure some reporting lines." I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my folder, laid it on the table. "My notice," I said, "effective Monday." That landed hard. Rick picked it up, gave it a quick scan, then looked at me again. "You're really walking?" "I didn't come here to beg for a title," I said. "I came here to work. I've been doing that, quietly, while the people with offices and bonuses built their careers on my documentation and my process maps." Darren shifted in his seat, looking like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. Rick set the paper down. "You're serious." "Completely. But I'm not making a final decision until Monday." You've got until then, Darren finally spoke. Look, no one's saying you haven't pulled weight. You didn't think I'd ever leave, I cut in. You thought I'd just keep cleaning your messes and smiling through it. Rick raised a hand. Let's stay focused. What exactly does the other offer give you that we can't? I stood. We can talk about it later. I've got work to finish. Ferris still needs fixing. Rick nodded once. We'll follow up. Darren didn't look at me when I walked out. I passed 3 coworkers in the hallway. They all looked like they wanted to ask what happened. No one said a word. Back at my desk, I flipped open my laptop and started typing out the Ferris correction plan. Everything they needed was in my head. Timelines, patches, how to clean the back end without triggering more client alerts. But now they knew something else too. I didn't have to be here. 10 minutes after I started the Ferris corrections, Rick's assistant tapped on my cube. He wants to see you. Now I followed her to the back office. Rick's, the corner one with the blinds always half closed like some kind of executive poker room. Inside, the lights were low, door already shut behind me. Rick didn't bother standing. Sit, he said, waving me over. Let's talk about what it's really going to take to keep you. I sat across from him. Calm. I'd already run this conversation in my head a dozen times. Full control of systems, I said. I hire my own team. No more routing through Darren. I report directly to you. Rick nodded slowly, eyes steady on mine. All right. Title would be Director of Operations Systems. Double your current salary. Flexible hours. You pick 3 new hires, I'll approve them. I didn't say anything. Just let it hang in the air. Rick leaned forward. Still not enough? I looked him straight in the eye. The other offer gives me a clean slate. No baggage, no one second-guessing if I belong. You built this place from the inside, he said. Every process worth anything around here has your fingerprints on it. You leave, you start over. New politics, new learning curve, new people who don't know what you can do yet. Or, I said, I get a chance to build something where I don't have to fight for recognition every day. He sat back nodding, lips pressed in a line. I'm not rushing the call, I told him. You'll have my answer Monday? Rick tapped a pen on the edge of his desk, thinking. Can you fix the Ferris situation today? Yes. He didn't thank me, just gave a short nod like a man trying not to show relief. I stood up. Appreciate the straight talk, he said. I paused at the door. Better late than never. Then I walked out, already rebuilding Ferris's system step by step in my head. I was back at my desk before the blinds stopped swaying behind me. Pulled up the Ferris dock, opened 3 windows side by side, and got to work. 2 hours. That's all it took. I mapped the dependencies, flagged the duplications, rewrote the summary logic, and added an appendix so the client could trace every change back to the original input. Built out a step-by-step flowchart for the team, made sure no one needed to chase me for clarification. I even added tab notes, color-coded idiot proof. When I was done, I uploaded it to the drive and shot off a single message. Ferris cleaned. Ready for review. 10 minutes later, my inbox pinged with an email from Rick. Subject line, offer in writing. I opened it and sat back. The number at the bottom made me blink twice. It wasn't just a raise, it was a statement. Full benefits, signing bonus, quarterly performance incentives. And it was real. I could forward that to my wife right now and tell her we should finally take that beach trip, upgraded to a resort. That's when Darren showed up. He hovered at the edge of my cube, looking like he hadn't slept. Shirt wrinkled, hair messy, not his usual smug self. You got a minute to grab lunch? I kept my eyes on the screen. Ferris called at 1. 2's open. He nodded. 2 it is. At exactly 2, I met him in the break room. He looked worse under the fluorescence, eyes red, jaw tight. We sat by the window, the small table between us like some kind of cold truce. I owe you an apology, he said, barely above a whisper. I downplayed your role, not because you weren't qualified. I just couldn't afford to lose you. I stared at him. No reaction. Let him keep going. I knew how much you held together, he said. I just figured if I gave you too much credit, someone else might notice too. I leaned forward. What exactly did you think I was missing for management? He rubbed his face like it physically hurt. You weren't politically visible enough. You did the work, but you didn't play the game. There it was. The quiet part. I said it out loud anyway. You stood on my work while pretending I didn't exist. He didn't argue, just nodded, like he knew I wasn't wrong. I thought I was protecting the department, he muttered. You were protecting yourself, I said. He didn't deny that either. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Not awkward, just real. I stood first. He didn't try to stop me. As I walked out of that room, I didn't need more time to think. I already knew where this road ended. That weekend, I barely touched my phone. No Slack pings, no calendar reminders, no emails from anyone in a suit. Just Mason and me. Saturday morning, I took him fishing. First time in over a year. We hit Lake Alta just after sunrise. Poles in the back of the truck, thermos full of gas station coffee. He sat on the passenger side, legs bouncing, asking questions about bait and hooks, like it was the first time again. In some ways, it was. We didn't catch a thing. Didn't matter. He skipped rocks while I watched the water and thought about every missed dinner, every late-night fix, every broken promise that got me here. Sunday afternoon, I called my brother, retired firefighter. No filter, zero patience for bullshit. I laid it all out. Both offers, the apology from Darren, the counter from Rick. He didn't even hesitate. You're either building something for yourself, he said, or you're just fixing stuff for people who don't care if you sink. Make sure you're not the damn mop that's stuck. Monday morning, I was in early. Not just early, old times early. The halls were quiet, printer still warming up, lights half on. Rick's office door was cracked. I walked in without knocking. He looked up, surprised. Didn't expect you this early. I'm taking the job, I said. Full hiring authority. And Darren stays? He blinked. You want him to stay? Firing him doesn't fix the culture. It just shifts the blame. I want control over how this place grows, not just revenge. He leaned back in his chair, let that sit for a second, then nodded. Fair enough. Darren's department will report through you moving forward. Good. By 10 a.m., the company-wide email went out. New title, new org chart, new structure. My name right there in bold, Director of Operations Systems. A title they'd never have offered if the place hadn't been falling apart. I didn't smile, didn't puff my chest, but I saw the looks. People started peeking over their cubes, whispering in hallways. A couple admins gave me nods as I passed, the kind that said, finally. Nobody clapped, no speeches, just quiet ripple effects. Subtle power shift. I sat back down at my new desk, same floor, better view, and opened the hiring plan I'd drafted 2 months ago, back when I still thought no one would ever read it, and I got to work. The shift was instant. Suddenly I was the guy everyone wanted to have lunch with. Slack messages, LinkedIn connects, coffee invites, all from the same people who spent 6 years forgetting my name. Folks who used to breeze past my cube like I was part of the furniture, now smiled and asked about my weekend. The execs who hadn't looked me in the eye since my second year started popping by, just to check in, said it like we'd been old friends. I didn't play dumb. I knew what it was. It wasn't admiration. It was alignment. The tide had turned, and everyone wanted to be on the dry side of it. Even the admins, the ones who really run a place, gave me these small, knowing nods. The kind that said, we saw this coming before you did. Around 11, Darren showed up at my door, didn't knock, just hovered, clutching a folder to his chest like a waiter bringing the check to the wrong table. Quarterly roadmap, he said, voice flat. I took it without standing, flipped through the pages, clean format, decent projections, but light on implementation. Thanks, I said, then looked him dead in the eye. From now on, coordinate everything through my office. He didn't argue, just nodded and walked out like a man who knew the scoreboard had flipped and he wasn't on the winning side anymore. I didn't gloat. He looked like he was already carrying enough. The rest of the day was meetings, onboarding prep, reviewing old budgets. I barely had time to eat, but I didn't mind. For the first time, the work felt like mine. Hat night. The lights were low, and the floor was mostly empty when Rick stopped by my office. I wasn't slipping back into old habits. I was staying late because the work finally felt like mine. He poked his head in and raised an eyebrow. You're still here? Planning, I said, and handed him the folder I'd been fine-tuning all day. 12-page restructure proposal, full plan for building a new ops department. He opened it, started flipping. Internal promotion focused, top to bottom, I said. Training, peer mentorship, full visibility, clear path up or out, no more bottlenecks. He scanned a few pages, nodding as he read. You built this over the weekend? I looked at him. No, I've had it ready for 2 years. That landed. He didn't say much after that, just tucked the folder under his arm and told me he'd get back to me by Friday. After he left, I leaned back in my chair. For years, I'd been the glue that held everything together. Quiet glue, invisible glue. Now, I was the one writing the playbook. 3 months later, the place ran like a machine. Clean systems, clear roles, fewer fires, faster fixes. Nobody waited for permission to do their job. They knew what their job was, and more importantly, they knew someone had their back. I'd hired 2 guys who'd been buried in entry-level hell for years, passed over, ignored. One of them built a supplier dashboard that cut processing time by 30%. The other rebuilt our scheduling logic in 2 weeks flat. They'd been ready. All they needed was daylight. Ferris expanded their contract, started name-dropping my team in every review call. Not me, the team. That was the win. As for Darren, we stayed professional. Not warm, but civil. Once he was out of my way, he got better at client-side work. Fewer stumbles, better follow-through. Maybe he just needed someone above him who actually gave a damn. I still clocked out at 5 on the dot. No more late nights, no more laptop at the dinner table. When I walked in the door, Mason didn't ask if I had to go back out. He just looked up and grinned. How was the day, Dad? Productive, I said, dropping my bag on the counter and flipping open a few meeting notes. You good with frozen pizza tonight? Yeah, he said, dragging the box out. You still like your new job? I looked at him, then at the notes, then back. I like that I can build things now, I said. Things that last. Halfway through the second slice, my phone buzzed. Text from Rick. Board approved VP title effective next month. Congrats. Darren supported it. I set the phone down and leaned back. Not because I won, because I finally stopped letting them decide if I was worthy. The title, the desk, the recognition, that wasn't the real victory. The victory was walking through that office every day knowing that nobody else like me would be buried again. Not on my watch.